So to order at 5:30. And do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
One adjustment.
One adjustment.
A request from Putney General Store for an application for malt tasting permit. Check made out to Vermont Department of Liquor Control. My understanding, the board acts as the Board of Liquor Commissioners for
And
the
that's-
town of Putney.
That's not the one that's listed here?
It is listed there, we did get it on the agenda, oh my god. We've had a few changes on
All
it,
right.
right, so that's actually there, we're good. Damn. This agenda has gone through some gyrations and considerations, and we actually took stuff off it.
Yeah.
All right.
And said we're gonna wait.
Any other adjustments?
No, there are no adjustments now,
All right.
that's been dealt with.
Move on to the approval of the minutes of December 13th. Was it only a week ago?
I had one correction, which is
Interpretation?
Yeah, it seemed like a appropriate.
It did. I had to look at it several times.
Instead of in the, about the third sentence, Fletcher Proctor gave his interruption of the current situation.
Sorry.
So,
Now, it might have been, but still someone
They were
had.
close.
Understand. Interpretation on the left side,
Yeah.
All right.
okay?
And then I just, a couple of other little minor ones, I'll just hand this to her.
yeah, a couple
Yeah.
spelling.
Thank you.
You'll have to write that 100 times on blackboard between now and
Hopefully I can understand.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as corrected.
Okay.
Second?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any public comment for items not on the agenda tonight? I'm assuming you guys are here for agenda items, budgetary considerations. So move right on to new business. You want to take care of the
The liquor permit.
liquor permit first?
Can you pass that to Karen?
So like I alluded to under opening comments, which makes sense now. Putney General Store requesting an application for malt tasting permit. License year May 1st through April 30th the following year. They are going to be holding an event for tasting. I believe it's sometime during the week of January 19th. And so this has to go to the state and be approved and come back. You, as the Board of Liquor Commissioners for the town of Putney, need to acknowledge, and I think typically the clerk writes a letter that says the Board of Liquor Commissioners has adopted and said that they can apply for this permit. There's no signature space for the manager, for the board, for the clerk, but as liquor commissioners, you need to be aware that this is a permit being requested.
I'll make a motion that we approve the application for a malt tasting permit for the Putney General Store.
Second?
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Should we do you
No,
want
we'll
us
give notice. We'll just give
to go
notice
to
to
Karen
that.
or?
Karen can have it, yeah.
So how does that work, say,
Thank you.
that you can have a liquor license to sell off sale, but
To have
consumption?
on-site consumption, right.
And in this case, specifically, tasting has restrictions.
Yeah, so I think they're
Number of
having,
ounces per glass.
Oh, I see, okay.
As a tasting is different than a
And
consuming.
Gotcha.
All right.
So you'll have to put your fake beard on when you
Yeah.
go through the second time.
exactly.
All right, we have a request from Neil Madow, spoke to us last week about.
Spoke to you last week, so there's a memo in your packages dated December 14th to the board from myself. I can read or you can read. Next one down.
Yeah.
There you go.
So if he's gonna remain at the 3 units, why would we be living past balance?
As reflected in his comments last meeting that he attended with us, is that the building has been empty, hasn't been used as a restaurant, and so he is believing that he should be able to just pay the minimum as if he was a single unit for the times that it was empty. He hasn't requested that to continue indefinitely. Otherwise, he would ask for allocation reduction, a unit change. He's simply asking for relief against those values. He was requesting from May of 2016 until now, but he is paid through October. So the first bill that shows up in this total is actually has a balance from October of 2016.
So going forward, he will be paying on the 3.
On 3 units. He'd be billed the 3 units next week. Actually, the bill won't go out until January 2nd, but there'll be 3 units on it and whatever use is on it, because he hasn't asked for a reduction in units. He's asking for a relief from indebtedness to us.
So what would prevent him from coming to us 2 years from now and saying, can you give me relief on the 3 units
Nothing.
that I have been,
Nothing.
that complicates it a little bit for me.
Right. So in our conversation at that time with Neil, the concern was if he actually asked for a reduction in units, that's not to relieve past, but to change forward. And he's looking to just get financial relief and not lose the allocation, not lose the bond payments, if you will, he's been paying with. So if he was to ask for that, he'd then owe what he owes now, and he'd be billed for 1 unit in the future. But then if he opened a restaurant or any other type of business
He'd have
requiring
to
more
come
allocation, he'd have to come back and then request more allocation. So this is strictly for financial relief, and that's it.
Well, do we want to see some kind of recognition of that? Something in writing, something for the record, that at some point in the future we'll cover those?
Such as,
Well, that
if you were
he
to,
he leases it out, opens a bit of a business again.
he'll have 3 units.
When it's-
Nothing changes other than, you know, the wording here would indicate you would be relieving him for sewer interest and penalty charges of $1,523.33. Everything is on 3 units, and so basically divide by 3 and relieve 2/3 of it. That's what I've calculated. It is not this board's problem, the town's problem, that he has not leased or rented the space. He's asked for relief, and I brought it to you.
Yeah. Concerned about the precedent it sets if we do this. I mean, if I was under the impression, and not that this is what he said, but this is what I heard, or thought I heard, was that he was assuming that he would keep it at 1 unit going forward, which made me think, well, if you were gonna reduce it to 1 unit and keep it there, maybe we give relief from that time. But, you know, again,
That's not,
2 years from now, he could come back and ask for the same financial relief, but he's holding 3 allocations.
yes.
So I'm not sure how we handle that.
Can we do this, as a one time only?
Well, it's a one-time with the board sitting here today. I will just throw out, look at the Mark Zeider connection for sewer situation from 2001. So you go back and find in the history of your situation, something may have already been decided or set as a precedent or not. Again, my take on his request is a financial relief, not a relief of his ability to hold and maintain 3 units at that building.
Right.
Part of my understanding too was that it's because he misunderstood from previous, and I don't remember the specifics, but he misunderstood what could or couldn't happen.
Yeah,
Because I guess all the rules, so to speak, were not laid out to him.
yeah.
And so he would have acted sooner. But I still would be a little bit concerned about setting a precedent. I mean, why wouldn't anyone
Yeah.
go forth with a similar request?
Right. I mean, it's an unusual circumstance because it's an unusual circumstance, but we don't usually give relief to people unless we made a mistake or there were significant extenuating circumstances, you know, which he, you know, I mean, it sounds like he's had personal situation that has been an extenuating circumstance, but I'm not sure we should take responsibility for that. I'm not sure what to do in this situation.
Well, we can table this and discuss it further, think about it if you want to.
I can
Right.
reach out and request that he attend a future board meeting to continue this discussion, knowing that within 2 weeks, we will be producing another bill, balance forward,
With
adding
adding
1%.
that, right.
And this will continue until, you know, come to an understanding. You know, at this point, I think the promulgation of this was he was away for medical treatment and his mail was not forwarded to him, and so he didn't even know things were going on or not going on. So,
Mhm.
again, that is not, personal business is not a function of the town,
Mhm.
so.
I would certainly think that doing a 2/3 relief would be generous on our part if we were gonna do that. You know, if we wanna do some relief, I'm not sure how we go about that. But, I mean, do you have any sort of a recommendation or?
I presented what he requested.
Right.
And from my standpoint, what we offer are payment arrangements to pay your debts. And typically, my methodology is to look out 6 months or a year and say, here's the new billing that's going to come, here's what you owe now, here's an estimated interest and penalties that will be added until you get caught up. And it's going to take, you know, $300 a month for 6 months to get you this paid and what future billing's coming. But it's going to take $300 a month to do it. And that's the methodology I do on taxes, on utilities, whatever. Look at some schedule that anticipates additional new charges and try to get arrangements for them to fit. If it doesn't fit in their cash flow, it doesn't fit. They've got to.
No, I would also say, I mean, he can reduce it to 1 unit
By requesting allocation change.
and keep it at that to keep his cost to a minimum, but keep a reservation on the 1. But then if he rents it again, then he would have to,
Apply for allocation change again.
which presumably would not be a problem unless, as we said, some
Yeah.
large entity comes into town. But
Well, I mean, can we simply, I suppose, guarantee that option that it would remain open for him to do so, to increase his allocation?
You can't.
Back
well, if we guarantee it, then we should be charging him for it because other people who it's guaranteed for.
Yeah.
are paying.
It is the guarantee.
Right, well, my question then is, are we that tight on our capacities?
No, I don't think we are.
Right, I mean, realistically, are we that tight on our capacities?
That's almost
Five or
a
10?
worse precedent than simply
Okay,
doing
no,
cash.
I'm merely,
Because that could be
Bring it up.
definitive.
yeah, I can see
if-
where that would have been. Well,
If the response wants to be, we'll relieve you of 2/3, but you must and you will be reduced to 1 unit and we'll have to reapply in the future. I mean, that says, okay, we're gonna relieve you, but now you're not gonna have that allocation anymore.
Well, again, I'm just concerned about that bill building up again And not, you know, I'm not questioning Neil's ability to pay bills or anything like that, I'm just, you know, that's a,
So
Are we gonna be at
Yeah.
the same spot 2
2 years from now,
Yep.
saying, well, wait a
Exactly.
minute, now we have to relieve
We're not-
2/3 of it going
Yeah.
back, so.
this is,
If he, I guess my feeling would be if he wants to reduce the cost, then that's essentially the agreement he's
gonna
doing,
enter into
is to reduce the,
allocation.
Mhm.
All right,
if he doesn't want to do that, then I think we think about a payment plan and or maybe, you know, if it made sense to do some reduction for some reason, then we could consider that, but
Well, I was wondering if due to extenuating circumstances such as his health or whatever, you know, if anything, just the charge, interest and penalties, you know, that, I mean, that would be
do we reduce it just to principal?
to relieve it
just
of the interest and
penalties,
penalties.
but
Yeah.
that would make sense to me.
Yeah, we
But,
just, we have to be, you know,
Diligent.
I don't wanna sound like the bad guy, but, you know,
That would be.
not paying bills when your health isn't good is a problem that all of us have to work with.
So that'd be around $315, $316 of relief. Again, subject to 1% interest immediately, January 1st.
Right,
You know, so
Right.
it just keeps building,
it will rebuild.
yeah.
Right.
You got a recommendation, Mr. Chair?
Actually, that, in a way, it sounds like it might be appropriate is, that we relieve the interest and penalty for now, and maybe, I don't know, half of that figure? With the understanding that, you know, that it would be reduced to a single for now, and just reapply for
For additional allocation,
the allocation upon it. I mean,
Is there a cost to reapply?
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
$40
It's not.
for a change in allocation, yeah.
And in
So
all
I can-
probability, we're going to have capacity within a foreseeable timeframe.
A reasonable
I mean,
foreseeable
we cannot,
future.
sure, we can't go
Right.
10 years
Right.
down the road, 15
Yeah.
years down the road.
Yeah.
But probably, you know, I'm not gonna put a number on it.
A reasonable.
Yeah,
well,
no, I think if he wants to save money, that's the way
Right.
he should go. I don't wanna enter into the same agreement based on the assumption that we aren't gonna be sitting here 2 years from
If we're
now.
not doing the same
Talking
thing.
about the same thing, sure.
So the offer is to relieve interest and penalty and to reduce his unit count to 1 and leave the remaining balance there, subject to interest in the future. Is that,
Yeah, I mean,
Why don't we start with that and see
if he's,
Yeah.
Amenable to that.
if he wants to, you know,
Come before us
make a
again,
proposal of
make
some
a-
sort, I guess we would obviously listen to that, but I don't,
Okay.
you know.
how much is one application?
1/3,
One, oh, so
1/3,
of
yeah,
the,
1/3 of his total
19.
balance right now.
okay, so
And
roughly,
one allocation of sewer is 362
A quarter.
quarterly.
Right.
So he's been paying, yeah,
so by reducing to one, then within 4 months, he basically makes up all this.
Right.
I mean, then he's in the clear.
yes, the theory.
In theory, right,
Right.
yes. And in fact, ends up doing better over the next,
Did you work on that tax bill? Our most recent tax bill? That's for the feds? Yeah. What's the optimistic?
2 10s for a 5 and 2 5s for a 10.
I'm thinking of the Abbott and Costello routine.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we relieve the interest and penalties that have accumulated, and that we ask Mr. Madow to consider being reduced to a single unit allocation.
Okay.
the second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. On we go. Proposed budget, and
So a little bit
How
of
do we
recap.
Yep.
Last meeting, while I was regrouping, I gave to you the 8 pages of the town general and highway, and we I blew through the highlights, the staff change memo notes that are attached to various lines and whatnot, and that included the fire department, in which if Goddard is here to talk with you about if you have any specific questions. Things regarding the fire department budget that are changed. The typical KMA or Key Mutual Aid assessment to the town of Putney, as in most municipalities, went up 3%, which is
Pretty standard.
pretty standard, pretty normal, and they work diligently to try to make sure it's not,
Just over 1%.
just over one you
Just
went?
over 1%.
Okay. And then, the chief asked about 3-ton HVAC units being added to the fire station, that are heat exchangers that can be used as AC in the summer and for emergency events, if that is the emergency operations center. These units would run with the generator that's there and be a good crisis center that people could tolerate. And based on recent experiences around the world, having power and having AC for stressful situations can be good. Other than that, I can't think there's anything big, different in your budget.
You may have just said this, but how much would you assume you would be using those units for heating purposes?
If they're available to us, we'll use them a lot during the fall. Even days like today,
Yeah.
that would be significant for us to have that available instead of the boiler.
More,
Cost effective to use them instead of boiler?
That's what I've been told by numerous people. I don't know it for a fact, but
I don't either. I hear that thrown around
Yeah.
a lot, and I don't know. I mean, they're more efficient,
yeah.
but actual cost per BTU, I don't know. And not that.
Again, I've been told by many folks that have them and that actually install them, that there are savings
Right.
attached. So days like we had
Sort of
several days ago
swing
where it
meters
was,
there. Yeah.
0
Right.
and below 0, no, it's not gonna, it wouldn't be
Maybe
effective at all.
Right. Yeah.
But during the fall and early spring, absolutely.
So the concrete slab right now is circulating hot water in it.
That's right.
And so one of the things that will be prevalent is all of a sudden the floor is colder than it's ever been. So the boiler will do minimal work,
Right.
but it's not gonna call or draw for
No.
heat from the units on the wall mounts because they're gonna sense it's warm.
But it's just heated slab in the base, is that right?
No,
Or is
for the whole building.
The whole thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to give some input with that, when the building was first being planned, we had put in there to have, we had figured in for central air, and then that got cut pretty quickly into the project.
Yeah.
So instead, we've been using right along for the last we've been in there 10, 11, 12 years. Out in the meeting room area, the common area, we've had a wall-mounted AC unit, 240 volt AC unit.
Yeah.
And we've installed 4 of them. The 4th one being there now, which died 2 years ago. And I refuse to replace it because all we're doing is we're taking money and just throwing it away.
Yeah.
The reason they're dying so fast is simply because they are, during the summer, the thing is working nonstop to try to keep that place cool, and not really doing a great job of it. And then in dispatch in the offices, we've got just window air conditioners, and those are doing the same thing. They're not designed to be cooling spaces like that for the amount of time. Yeah.
So with 3 tower units, you would just have 3 heads inside, or would you have more heads?
No, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heads inside. So.
Each can ride 2
And
officers.
then along with that, we spec them heavy or larger, if you will.
Yeah.
So that, number one, they're not gonna work as hard up front. And number two, if we ever wanted to / needed to,
You could
we could add more
Tag
heads
another one on. Yeah.
to them, and still be perfectly fine.
Okay.
And that, the cost associated with that includes everything. We're gonna have to have, again, because we shortchanged on the front end, we're gonna have to have some electrical upgrades done in-house. Has nothing to do with the service coming in or anything. It's just in the building. So that cost is everything. Everything necessary.
So that was plugged into the budget under building improvements as if it's direct dollars raised by taxes to perform this task, not as borrowing through, if you will, capital or direct purchase borrowing. In all the numbers that I gave you at the last meeting. So leading into the capital discussion, this, the highway garage, there's capital items that could be done as capital and borrowed, but they're right now, I just put them in the tax rate. These are all part of that discussion about how one might do this
Yeah.
within budgeting to achieve the goal and how to, if you will, finance or directly buy.
Yeah.
As well, within the chief's budget is 43,000 to replace rescue two,
Rescue 2, yep.
which is in what year truck now?
94?
4?
No, not 90. 2001,
F-250.
F350.
F-350. And that is within what the capital budget had.
Yeah, that's a capital,
Is
that's
the-
on the capital.
List.
Yeah.
And is intended in the budget process, again, this is different than you've normally done it. I show it as proceeds from notes in the revenue stream, budgeted, that we're gonna borrow 43,000 with the expense line in the fire department to buy it. In the past, this would not have been shown within your budget. That would have been a separate article and then added as an unbudgeted revenue and an unbudgeted expense.
Right.
I'm showing it because the budget should show your cash flow intentions. And so, again, this doesn't, the way that one's being done for the truck, it doesn't impact your tax rate unless you in fact decide you're gonna spend 53,000 and only borrow 43. So otherwise, that's really the fire department's changes.
The only other thing which has been anticipated right along, and it's finally showing up in the budget, is from our transition back in on July 1, from volunteer to paid on call.
Yeah.
So that's beginning to be reflected
So
in the budget.
we've already gone through the, whatever it was, I think 11,000 that was
In
not,
this year?
somewhere for
In
that
this year?
purpose, and then,
yeah, we haven't gone through it yet, we're close.
but we're, okay, but it's just showing up
Yes,
as.
in the budget for.
Okay.
The budget 21?
21.6.
21.6.
And you,
In that 21.6, just to kind of keep things in perspective, that 21.6 is less than what we were funding for that line item for fire calls
yeah,
back in 2013.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So it at face value, it's an increase
Right,
for a perfectly legitimate purpose. At the end of the day, we're back to where we were originally back in 2013.
but you feel like this is.
Cost-wise, money-wise.
Right, but you
Yep.
feel like this is helping the situation?
Absolutely.
Not fixing the situation?
It's not fixing,
but
it's helping. It certainly is not a fix, it certainly is a huge help.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple of the folks in the firehouse earlier today, and we were talking about a bunch of different things that are going on in the area. And they commented that this is huge for them.
Helpful system.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
It's less of a loss of income.
Yeah.
Right, it's not,
Right.
it doesn't make up for what they're losing.
Right.
in a
Well,
real job,
and-
it's less of a loss to them.
Right, and when we look at it from our perspective compared to other potential ways to bolster personnel at calls, this is a pretty economical way, really economical way, so if that continues to work. Good.
But also recognizing our continued concern and your concerns.
Absolutely.
Oh, right.
And as all
Yeah.
fire departments are going through these concerns,
Yeah,
that these are sort of stopgap measures in a much larger problem.
yeah,
And, we need to continue to work on that.
yeah. No, it's nice that it takes a little bit of pressure off you.
Yes. Oh, no,
to
I-
keep that rolling.
And pressure off your department and your people.
Tom, was there anything else in the budget that you think needed to be highlighted that I missed?
No, everything else is there is either reductions here and there or remaining the same level funded.
I can't remember whether I asked this question already, but as far as, mini splits, I'm in favor of the idea of mini splits, definitely, as far as a form of heat and AC. Where do we stand with the solar? Did I ask about this already? So, where are we as far as our budget, our cost of electrical with our
purchased
from
solar.
solar?
Correct.
So,
Can you,
one of the simplest methods to understand is basically instead of paying 21 cents per kilowatt, you're paying 19. And so, and this is, as they produce energy, it is by percentage distributed.
right,
So this time of year, there is, I think the number is 14% of what gets produced is being credited to the pool.
Yeah.
You know how much electricity the pool's using today? Nothing. So the dynamics of this that I'm concerned about is that the pool, by giving credit, builds up a kilowatt credit, which is translated into dollars, but it's kilowatts. And you have to use that credit in kilowatts within 12 months of the month that you earn it. And I'm concerned that at some point, Putney will be in a position with some of these accounts that are spread out like this, that the 12 months will lapse.
and we won't have.
You will have paid for power twice. Once the month that it was produced by the solar company, and then the month that you lost the available credit, you'll be paying Green Mountain Power for. And that mathematics hasn't been expanded out yet to see, are you in a situation where when you become more efficient, you actually buy the same kilowatt
Right,
twice?
but do we, as it is now, are we are we producing a surplus
Yes, oh yes, oh yeah.
by,
When you look at the balance sheet, there's a
On
credit sitting
annual.
out there of about $2,900. All of that's electrical dollar
excess?
excess credit.
Okay, so that would bolster an argument for putting these guys in, because
As
we'd
electric.
rather be we'd rather be using at or
using it,
just
not losing
slightly more than
Yeah.
we're,
Generation.
exactly,
Yeah.
in
And
order
I
to
think,
optimize that, so
um,
that wouldn't.
Again, our worst culprit's the pool because it's shut down for so many months. We'd have to look at, and one of the difficulties is the solar company gives us a bill and we pay it.
Right,
And then we use a percentage against Green Mountain Power's distribution of that net metering factor. And we have to then look at it account by account where the actual meters are that are being credited.
right.
And I think the fire station is one, but the library is not one.
It's not one.
And one other building is not one.
That's because it was not municipal
At
at
the
the
time.
time,
Yeah,
But we could be.
And streetlights
we
are
could
not
be
metered, so
adding
we don't
that
get
account
that.
to it also, if that makes
well,
sense.
I think that there was a one-time request to redistribute the production after they got a better history. But since then, that's been removed. We can't redistribute
Oh,
our allocation.
okay.
So my concern is maybe too much has been given to something that doesn't generate enough cost, you know, within a short enough time frame that we make sure we use that credit.
Well, again, good reason to do that.
I think his allocation is actually less than the pool's, because the pool has the three-phase pumps.
Okay.
So they
Pool has
have a
three-phase
different
pumps, or the pool, or the,
pool pumping system.
it does? Oh,
Yeah, and I don't even think they're variable speed pumps for that matter, so that when they kick on,
Sure.
demand goes like
Yeah.
this and we pay for demand. So those are the types of things, I'm familiar enough with electrical billing, because we did it at Nimerick, we still do it at Nimerick, and this concept. And my fear is that there is a way in which you end up not even realizing you're paying for power twice.
Right.
And it's a potential.
So
So monitoring that,
Yeah, keeping an eye on that and going towards more electrical consumption, if that, I mean, for example.
defeating conservation is our
No,
goal.
no, but if we're offsetting use of
Exactly.
fossil fuel BT, like, if, you know,
Yeah.
having a mini split in this building
Yeah.
might make a world of sense, you know?
Certainly the people here would think so in the summer.
Exactly, yeah, no, because we have the same issue here, trying to,
Yeah, keep the place cool enough in the
Yeah.
summer and warm enough in the winter.
outside the building with offices. Not the most efficient windows, and so on.
So,
Could run an extension cord from the fire station.
There you go. Big one.
well,
Stringing along those poles.
we were talking about the generators actually at the fire station and the lack thereof at the garage
Right.
today with Brian about the same thing, in terms of capital purchasing and emergency management.
Right.
The highway garage shuts down with power during an event like Irene, and they can't pump their own fuel out of the ground to keep the trucks rolling.
Even something as simple as the power outage we had for
8 hours.
6 hours.
In a bad, yeah, right, in
The
the
other
wrong
night.
circumstances, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
It was down,
it's terrible.
Yeah.
so
It actually hampered things there for hour and a half or so.
they had to set up the tractor, get the PTO,
PTO to
Set
run a
up.
generator
and
to,
then under circumstances, then you have to run the tractor to pump the fuel to fill the tractor.
right.
So
So it's a
some
closed
guys shuffle,
circuit
it's a
anyway,
closed.
so, yeah.
Yeah, so part of the conversation was the generator at the fire station is undersized
Yes.
and doesn't serve the entire facility.
So maybe
So
skip that.
maybe that should move and be
Well, we-
replaced.
Right, and that had been the plan from roughly 2008-ish. Now we're starting to run into problems with our generator, and I don't know how long that thing's gonna last. Without either having to have some major work done to it, or there's no work to be done to it.
Yeah.
So,
And in 2008, was the DEF compliancy in at that point?
yeah,
Yes? it was?
yes, yes.
That's probably what's wrong with
Is that a diesel or propane generator?
That's propane.
Propane.
Yeah.
Well, yours is propane. okay.
Yeah.
So, those were part of the capital concept and then emergency operations planning. And if we repurpose or reutilize what we have in places that better fit. I've often said a computer that goes onto a desk that never had one is still an upgrade, even if it's a 5-year-old computer.
Yeah.
So those are all kind of, again, sticking with the concept of capital, though it's on this line item. Emily is here from the library. We've been working on trying to address adding the library building into the capital schedule, which is in the town report. You don't have the library budget in front of you. We looked at that at the last meeting, or 2 meetings ago with Emily. But what you do have in your packet is the draft of MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. Emily and I can attest to needing to have an understanding between what the library board of trustees and the select board and the manager need to know as a working relationship relative to a municipal building. And this is a municipal building. Statutorily, the manager is responsible for property and buildings, their maintenance, their upkeep, their safety and whatnot, through the efforts of budgeting and working with the select board. The library trustees have a vested interest in this building and its purpose of serving patrons. And so, through an understanding of what is the library board's goal, objective to provide, and what should the select board town manager goals be to maintain. And so this is a one-page simple document that basically says property and building that is long-term structural improvements are the responsibility of the town manager, and the select board. But knowing that we need to work with the library director and the board of trustees of trying to help obtain some goals they have that are interrelated to this. But when it comes to things, buying fixtures, desks, and things like that, the library trustees in their operating budget would plan to do that stuff. Because that's actually to serve patrons in a direct way. This was missing in a previous life that both Emily and I survived somehow. And so trying to be proactive and make sure that there is an understanding that is reached between the boards so future boards understand why things are done a certain way. And so she did have an updated, and I don't know if this was given to you, but these are the types of things that they've got on their list. And there's only 3 on the list that would be considered added to town capital planning.
You were expecting a big crowd tonight, weren't you?
No, she brought these,
I brought
so.
those. I think 10, just in case.
So these are the types of items they're looking at. Thank you, Tom. If you're headed out.
See you, Tom. Thanks.
Thank you.
That they're looking at and what year and estimated cost. So if you could imagine in your town report, this new section, which is library building, being added with some sort of plan to budget
Capital fund.
and deal with. This is not to say that the library trustees may not, through use of resources they have, contribute towards these projects.
Right.
But they don't necessarily want to say, we'll take care of that all. Again, by the nature in the memo, it does say that it is the board and the manager with the help of the library director and the trustees that will get these projects done.
So do you have a guesstimate on an annual amount that would be, I mean, we should project this out, what, roughly 15 years in order to come up with an annual that would make sense to put in?
The first question is, do you want me to put it into your capital budget planning? It sounds like yes. And then from there, what else in the library going out? We know, as you've looked at this, the building is now of that age in which maintenance is a requirement if we want it to stay as nice as it is now.
Yeah.
And to be in that position. There is, within the scope, one of the practices I try to instill is that if you are constantly putting the same amount towards capital year after year, but you are not necessarily spending that amount every year, there are years when you need $500,000, but you've already got in the resource pool
Right.
$250,000 because there are years where there was nothing needed immediately.
Right.
Some would say that's, I'm paying for something that I'm never going to get to use. Well, your kid's college education is a perfect one. So that concept allows for a study tax rate. And the first things that get cut when the tax rate starts going up is they start cutting out, if you will, capital improvements and budgeting of major maintenance items. They let stuff be pushed out. And you've already experienced that. So as we are looking at that, I think that this is logical progression and making sure that we work, or you work, or the town works with the library trustees and understands that this is how this should function.
So who are we leaning on, you or them to come up with an annual budget number?
I would think the manager and the library director, or the finance director and the library director are gonna work on this together. Because this is just three things.
Right.
And if you had to say, well, right now, the HVAC is 15 years old and it's much like the generator at the fire station. When it goes, it's gone. Now
Right.
you now deal with
I
it.
have to deal with it, right?
So, is to be proactive and say, well, these are on their last legs. Can we do it next year? And
Is it on its last legs? Is the heating system on
I've been
its
told
last
that
legs?
they no longer make parts for the
the
different models
units.
we have. And that's a number for replacing everything all at once.
Yeah.
But it could be that we have 6 units, we might not even need 6 new units.
Today.
Probably not.
Or not just today, but it might not be necessary because the new units are so much more
The
efficient.
technology has changed.
Yeah, so much.
dramatically. Yeah.
So that number just reflects just a quick estimate of our maintenance.
Replacement.
Yeah, replacement of what we have now, but there's a number of different financial structures that we can use, including potentially leasing them from Efficiency Vermont or Green Mountain Power. I can't remember who
And
the
it's GMP, probably.
provider is, but that's a possibility. There's also, we could do 2 a year for 3 years if we were doing direct replacement. But these are the things that are kind of like on my mind because they need to be
Coming
done.
up.
They're coming up.
Yeah.
We've been working with Chip Greenberg, who was one of the original architects of the building, to do a long-term maintenance plan. And he made me a very nice spreadsheet of what's going to be probably needed when. I haven't gotten to price all of those different
Yeah.
things yet, but that's something I could certainly work on for next town report.
For expanding on this.
For expanding on that, so that.
Well, and for coming up with an accurate
Yeah,
annual
yeah.
request
Exactly.
for the purpose of a capital fund for the library, I mean,
Does he have as far as what informs these life expectancies and replace, does he have that technical knowledge to make those decisions?
he
or
does a lot of that kind of stuff. He probably can't put numbers on it.
Not very
Not
precisely.
not prices, but he can,
No.
I bet he can fairly accurately guesstimate how long the life of something is going to be.
Yeah.
But
Because I guess the other thing I would think too is that, there's only 3 things here, but probably
Right.
prioritizing, carpet replacement is a little more
No,
of an
that's
aesthetic
like,
type
we
of
can really
thing.
let that go longer,
Yeah.
certainly, but eventually it would be.
It gets to a
Yeah.
point where the path in the front door to the children's section is the one that's completely worn out.
right.
And you can certainly go to UniFirst and cover that up every week for $15.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
is that a solution?
that's
No.
certainly the least vital thing on
Or to
that
spread it
list.
out,
Yeah.
yeah, spread out the solution.
Well, and the other thing to consider, and I can't remember what's are they carpet tiles or?
They are not.
Yeah, so that would be a thing to consider is,
Yeah.
at least in that front entry, changing, even if you could do portions of it,
Yep.
the path to the kids, the computer area could all be
Cut.
tiles,
Blended
exactly,
in.
fitted, yeah, and then those would be,
So there are solutions, and one of the things that I caution on is creating buckets of capital as opposed to capital
Necessary capital.
as a process for everything to do with
Right.
town capital. Right now, you're sitting on what's called a capital fund, which has the word equipment in it, but there's also $15,000 in there for town hall renovation maintenance things, but it says equipment in the title, so converting that into our capital flow through we fund it, and then we do our projects over there. And so our budget for capital gets laid out with line items and plans. And each year you fund in, and each year you list what your obligations are. And as you look at the history, much like the financials here, 16 actual, 17 actual, 18 actual, you see the trend of what's been worked on as you do comparisons year to year. And it's in your capital and away from your taxation. Your taxation sees a contribution number that keeps going over there. And that, again, stabilizing the tax rate and the budget figure.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to huge swings.
Can I ask, do the other departments, we're not a department, but do the departments of the town have a fixed amount that's set aside for capital?
The methodology now is, capital is in the town report, if you look at the spreadsheet of
Yeah.
capital. The bulk of that is really indebtedness. And there are items in this budget proposed that are direct purchase. The over-the-rail mower replacement for the highway garage is a direct raise the money, buy the over-the-rail. But the fire truck rescue 2 that we talked about is to be borrowed over 5 years. Another highway piece of equipment is in the list to be funded over 5 years.
But I think sort of more accurate for your question, for the buildings, no.
Oh, okay.
No.
It's more of just.
You know, capital, for that, those guys have reasonably predictable schedules for equipment
Yeah.
replacement, and we tend to stand by those because
Yeah,
if you get behind on the equipment, that's problematic. So totally the same concept,
Yeah.
but just equipment versus building. But we've talked about, and, you know, certainly with Cynthia, we started talking about having a roof, actually, I think we have a line item, a
1,000 roof,
just,
as a fund.
which is sort of a roof, I don't know if he
All
likes the
the
term
roofs.
slush fund, but roof slush fund for whichever roof needs to be
Yeah.
done at a given time, but we could certainly benefit from having a more comprehensive capital replacement.
The boiler line item in school budgets.
Absolutely.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's gonna go at some point.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that, when you get to where the general fund contributes into that fund, the highway contributes to that fund, library starts budgeting, contributing to that fund through their operations, that pooled resource is not earmarked for any one of those. They are just sources bringing back, which then really begs the question, highway budgets into capital, the general fund then doesn't need to? Because again, when you look at highway activities and budgeting, that's the bulk of it. And-
You're talking equipment versus buildings.
Buildings.
I mean, if we did it appropriately for buildings as well, then it could
One
be.
for every department.
Yeah, you could do it different way. I mean, you know, because the maintenance for the highway department, you know, new doors being a good example, is not huge, but,
10 grand.
but we would benefit from having it laid out
On a time schedule.
schedule.
So that concept of the memorandum for the library, it sounds as if we should work to extend our capital plan,
Yes.
not our borrowing, just our plan, to bring the library building into the fold with its needs as a presentation of what our cost might be going into the future and what projects need to be considered as we look to the future. And then the memorandum of understanding really, I think, I don't know if the trustees have seen it yet?
They have seen a different version of it, and actually I worked with the finance committee, which is a committee of the board, on this one, mostly just because we got snowed out of our last meeting. So, no, they haven't seen and approved this, which is part of the reason it's a draft. It's also a draft because if you guys had some input on it, I'd love to work that in as well. But I worked with Chip on this, and then with the finance committee.
Yeah. So it's not meant to be all-knowing and all-saying. It's meant to provide the simplest concept of why one would call something capital and why one would call something normal operations.
Right.
And again, based on our past experience.
Well, the situation that the library is a municipal building is also relatively new, which is why we're not on the capital plan. That happened right before I came on, so maybe 4 years ago. So this is part of it is for me to write it out to make sure that I and the board also understand. What what we think to be true, and that we all agree on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea too, for, it's certainly somewhat the town manager's role, but, for the library board and or yourself to think about the steps that are gonna be involved in keeping that building in the condition it wants to be, more eyes on that is probably a good thing, so. Yeah. So we don't need to take an action on that?
No. I think if there was if any of you think of any wordsmithing you want to add or comments or ideas you want to try to get included in that, certainly you can forward them to me or to Emily. Your board meets next January?
The third Tuesday in January. Yeah.
So there's time to give some thought to that understanding, and certainly, I'm not sure we'll add the library into this town report except these few things, maybe, just to get the conversation going about, we're thinking more of municipal buildings than we have in the past.
Yeah, please do, if you have feedback on the MOU draft after this meeting, please do send it through directly to me. And so what would the next step be for us, for me to sort of present a draft to my board and then approve it and bring it back?
Yeah, I would think so. I can't imagine on this side that there's gonna be anything presented that is not reasonably thought out
Sure.
already. We've hit the big pieces.
But the goal for this, my understanding is that the goal for this is to have both boards approve it or
Yep.
accept it.
Makes sense, yeah.
Okay, just
Yeah,
making
to
sure.
be an adopted MOU, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So when you get done at the bottom, you can draft select board members?
Yeah, I'll make some lines,
Trustees?
yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry, great.
Okay?
Are you gonna add some of the, I mean, there is the roof, I know.
Oh, that is just the next few years. I'm hoping that the roof holds on.
Okay, yeah.
I think we still have some time for that.
But those are the things that Chip will look at.
Yeah, certainly that list is going to expand. That's sort of just what's coming up, and part of the reason I'd love to see that short list in this coming town report is that those things are, especially staining the building, especially the south side of the building, that could really be done pretty soon, and I think it should be done really soon.
Yeah.
And just the expectation of having to pay for the HVAC replacements, we better all start expecting that, since all of a sudden it is time for me to expect it. So, no, that list will certainly expand when I do more research on replacement of some of the other larger systems.
So there is, and I throw this out to the select board can, by separate article, request from the public to fund either by borrowing or direct tax dollars as a separate
Capital
article,
fund.
any one of these things.
Right.
And if the voters so choose, again, you add it to the tax rate, and that project is now done with the authority of the voters. I've seen this utilized as a tool in which we set a budget to work on, and this is not in our capital plan this year, but as an article, if the public wants us to do this, and it makes sense, and I look at 13.8, to stain the building. What is that? 0.4 of a cent, and you take a building and you preserve it for 0.4 of a cent, yes, it makes sense. But if you say, I want to approve a $500,000 capital budget this year, well, it's a lot to consume. That's a lot for someone to figure out who's not in it every day.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, it looks, just looking at these, and obviously there's gonna be a whole lot, if we were putting somewhere in the bulk of $12,000 to $15,000 away a year, that would be heading us in the right direction.
Direction.
If that's the right number, or whether that's 18,000 or 9,000, hard
Yeah.
to say, but, you
It's
know.
an interesting concept. This is done in Milton, Vermont. By vote annually, at every annual budget, there is by definition added 1.5 cents to the tax rate when set to fund
For
capital.
capital,
Period.
it's not a bad idea.
So therefore, it's always 1.5 cents. And if the
Right.
grand list goes up or down, then the contribution goes up or down with it.
Yeah,
But it's 1.5 cents on the tax rate that goes to the capital fund.
Certainly.
Um,
It simplifies it.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
simplifies
And
the
you know what,
explanation and
you're not looking at
assures
dollar
the
cents,
state.
you're looking at the tax rate, which is what the public really, that's the level they wanna know, what's my tax rate doing?
right.
So, I mean, that's a methodology again, and that can be adopted by vote of the public, that annually there shall be 1 cent added, or whatever number,
Yeah,
to go to the capital fund, and the capital fund's administered by the board.
right.
So, again, different techniques.
It sounds like
Smart.
yeah, that sounds like a good thing to consider.
All right, anything else for Emily?
Other than, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for the chili, everyone. Thank you, Karen. Have a good
Merry
night.
Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you guys too. Thank you.
On with the budget. What's next?
On the budget, water sewer.
Water sewer, always
This should be the
exciting.
last 2 pages in the budget documents that are handed to you. It's at page 1 and 2 for the sewer, and a 1-pager for the water.
Speaking of water.
Speaking of that. So I wanted to give you the rundown, lowdown here. In the budget presented, particularly wastewater, the Simon's off is the change. Everything else pretty much remains identical, but Simon's operation, 3% increase,
3%.
anticipated by conversation with them. But there is a question, because we lost our 2004 Dakota pickup. And they have been charging us $400 a month for use of a Simon's operation pickup. And as a result, when I calculated out, you would see that it's much more than 3% in the budget numbers, because we're paying right now for $400 a month that we didn't have budgeted for Simon's operation pickup. It is my opinion that we don't need a vehicle. We can let them run a pickup. From conversations of one of our heavy pickup users, it is probably a good thing that it is not a town pickup run by a contractor
Right.
who is not required to do CDL testing in a vehicle that is commercially ours. So it doesn't fall under our employee rules. So we are better off to let it be their equipment
Yeah.
in that regard. I hadn't even considered that as a thought, but it makes perfect sense to me that we're not talking fire apparatus now. We're actually talking a municipal daily use that they own, operate, insure, and are responsible for the driver. And we're not a party to that. So that's why that number looks like it's significant more than 3%, is because
3% annual increase, you mean?
it's a 3%
Yeah.
annual increase, but I
But
also
you added that in.
added the 400 and I added 3% to the 400, so it's $412.
Right, so going forward, that would be just a recognized cost of it, and then it would be our 3% annual
Yeah.
increase.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why as you look, and that line goes from, I think it's bottom of page 1 of 2 for sewer. And you see it goes from Simon's operation from 89,879, which is budget 2018, to 97,404 as the budget number. So that's the middle column, and the the next to last column, and that shows 8.37% increase in budget. And again, the difference is, you didn't budget to use the truck.
Right.
So I'm including that in the next budget. But it is a 3% increase on what we are currently paying monthly.
Right.
That's your big ticket item. I plugged in, if I can just find it now, the software for EJ Prescott that we are paying on warrant tonight. I plugged that $2,500 into operational costs for contracted services.
So that's what that increase in contracted services is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And we just put that into water. Is that just water? Or
It's,
is it-
yeah, we just put it into water. The device is used to read water meters. So typically that's where you charge it.
Yeah,
I have seen organizations split that cost between water and wastewater, but our wastewater isn't, most of our wastewater is not derived at by water consumption.
right,
It's flat billed, so,
yeah.
you know, does it make sense? You know, if we were to try to wastewater billing based upon flow plus a basic charge, we'd have to figure out how to compensate for those who are not on the water system. And that's already done by allocation and base charge, so. Yeah, there are those who are on it and then we measure their personal water flow, because they're not on our water system as an option, so. So that being said, there has been no attempt to calculate what would happen or what should happen to the rates for water and wastewater until I know what the expenditures are you are looking at to see what does need to be generated. As well, just this year and before probably June 30th, we should see Zyder with 2 units of wastewater coming on board. Paynemeyer coming on with 1. And Chute coming on with 1. And these white people, I mean, Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust connecting with 18 units. So what we might necessarily need for a rate increase on water and wastewater, we might have enough units coming on board that rate increase doesn't have to be as big. I still would like to try the exercise of arranging the $45,000 to not be a requirement. But at this stage of the game, your indebtedness is about what's being paid. So, it's a function of time. So that exercise to me is definitely first predicated on the budget process. Chris Hayes and Joe don't see anything that needs to be added to the budget in terms of practical and concepts. Knowing you just had your infrastructure studied, that anything you would be doing there would end up probably requiring you to go out and get indebtedness to perform. It wouldn't be something you would try to raise and do in user fees in 1 year. Most of that stuff is, $40,000, $50,000 to
Start exploring it.
just design, engineer design. So those expenditure budgets, that's really all that's changed is the Simon's Op and the EJ Prescott building we need.
So we're not looking to approve these tonight, or?
No.
Okay.
I again, would like the members to peruse these and
Yeah.
inquire with questions. And it doesn't make sense or you think should be added. So I'm gonna circle back around to a memo, which I believe is in your package. If we didn't put it in there, was the security systems memo that Tom Goddard had provided. Not in our capital plan, not in our budget.
It's not in the packet.
It's not in the package,
No.
okay. But we have that, and certainly can email it.
And it's just for 12,000-ish, right?
For all of it,
So, yeah,
yeah. And again, from a standpoint of, as a warrant article, shall we secure our buildings with the following costs? So that's where we could choose, and I think based upon our recent history of the wastewater plant, a camera system there begins to make sense to us. It is off the beaten path.
yeah,
Not
well, and we've had ongoing issues at the highway department, not often, but often enough, yeah, exactly,
And,
so that,
and that facility does have cameras.
currently, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of insurance savings if you have?
Yeah, probably not measurable.
Yeah.
Liability is liability.
Insurance company
We'll tick
for you.
off 1/10 of 1%.
During our 10% increase.
Over 3
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right, yeah, amortized.
What there is the ability to then, prosecute.
Right.
If you've got actual video evidence, it's pretty damning for someone to have video evidence.
Yeah.
Well, I worked at the school.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
which was a huge savings.
Yeah.
in overall.
Yeah.
So those two are relatively straightforward. We have the same features. We have basically a fixed increase. The contract for Simons is up June 30. I've already had a conversation with them about the 3% for each year thereafter. And that's the budget number that's in there. All the budget numbers are rounded up $1, no matter if it's 1 cent over or not, it's rounded up $1, so there's no pennies hanging off the end of our budgets. Also in your packet, you found, I think it was Wyndham Windsor solid waste. I had thrown in that budget, 27.5 or something like that, turns out to be 27.515, slight increase of $15, because that's actually what comes out. They had actually, by phone conversation, I got one number, then they adopted their budget, and so we got the new notice, that's been updated. So our need to finalize budgets really happens in January. And to that end, addressing how you want to, if you want to address the items that I put in as building improvements, which are significant numbers. The fact that we haven't done anything in this budget with recycling. Nothing. And so from the floor during the meeting, you may get, hey, I want to raise this budget $360,000 and instruct the board to go out and hire a contractor to do curbside pickup. I don't know where that'll go.
Right.
And I don't think any of you can predict it at this point. But the 40 grand that went in to talk about recycling and then the presentation of numbers that I did to you, yeah, you could have done something for 40 grand and we'd be looking at more security and hiring another body to manage this thing. So the reality of that, I didn't want to predict and put a number in there.
Yeah, we should just be prepared to
I'm
answer questions accurately as to what the different options do cost
And what it would cost us, right?
Yeah.
for all of the different
And
costs.
well, I gave you the probably a medium transfer station in Rockingham, I'm hoping,
Right.
I think 8 hours, 4 hours, 2 different days of the week, as an option, and what that cost was, but there's 12 volunteers there,
Right.
That's a lot of
and then the Westminster option with the curbside pickup for single-family residentials only,
Only, right.
and what that cost. So, that would be, for us to get into that business, would be, from an auditor standpoint, entering into a new significant process or department of activity for accounting, and that would be a transfer station if you began to run one. For Rockingham, that number was like $78,000, when a penny raises 50. For us, if it's $78,000, that's 3 cents. It's almost,
3.5.
almost 3.5, yeah, 23,000 per penny.
Would be very expensive for us to go into the dump business, plain and simple. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we've presented that over and
Over
over
again.
again. Just saying, I mean, that we can't guess what the voters are going to
Yeah.
decide for us, but
Yeah.
our recommendation so far has been that this is a cost that we're trying to avoid,
Yeah,
particularly in light of taking on the paid on-call situation at the fire department, I mean, we looked at policing and the costs associated with that
yeah.
and said, okay, would be nice, but,
But this is
Right.
what,
And I believe last year's budget you presented was 40,000, but it got updated to 72 because you are paying 72 this year.
72 for the, yes.
Full-time officer.
Yes,
But what
yes.
you presented at town report got modified at town meeting.
Right, that's because, I think that's correct, because we presented exactly at halftime. We
Yes.
put in a halftime because that's what we had at the time,
Yeah,
and then said, essentially said, we think it might make sense to go to a full-time person, but.
so it got modified
but
on
you
the
guys-
floor.
Right,
Okay,
But
so
you guys-
in this budget is full-time being repeated.
yes, I think that makes sense.
And we got, I have for the budget process, I have this folder that has the backup of how you arrive at these numbers, and William County Sheriff Snow is in there for that annual budget.
Which we don't arrive at, they just arrive
They,
at for
they,
us.
they arrive at it for us,
Yeah.
yes. So, any other thoughts on the budget talks, things you want to try to have them look into? And like I said, to try to figure out July 1, what a water and wastewater rate change might be. I can forecast 4 connecting here or 18 connecting down there and set some number. But I'm thinking after you get your actual connections and someone comes in and starts negotiating, particularly the 18 units, you might be in a position where you have to make a rate change for that year sometime in April, May, as opposed to before town report goes out. Certainly, that's gonna be a rather large consumer of water down there. 18 units. Yeah. All right. Next item?
all right. Under old business, I see we have a situation with something further about the VMERS. I
B.
guess we're VMERS B resolution.
Yes, so within your
Looking at,
packets, there is a page prepared by Karen. Again, within the budget that I've presented to you for your review is the calculation of the town's expense for VMERS considered as if you have adopted this resolution for all town employees to have access to VMERS Group B. We presently have VMERS Group A for town employees. The library, when they came on board as being employees paid through the town, were already in Group B. This would basically allow all employees to be in Group B. The benefit package for Group B, in my opinion, is significantly better than Group A.
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will let them know.
Signature
Yeah,
on.
their signature on,
this-
pick one
okay.
and sign it, and we will certainly inform VMERS. I'm sure the employees will thank you greatly. We've had a couple inquiries from employees who, when VMERS first came in, opted not to join VMERS and to stay with your simple
Right.
plan. My discussions, and again, this might just be my ability to communicate with them. They're expressing interest to get into VMERS now. They are young enough, they could get 5 years vested. And there is both an employee-employer contribution, and there's a definite payout pattern plan that's in that program. So Karen and I are pursuing through VMERS on behalf of these employees to get them into the program, just so you're aware of that. The budget does not project that to happen, but if it does happen, the difference is about 0.5% because you were already paying 5. This would just be paying 5.5. To me, insignificant, to the benefit of the employee.
Why do we have a couple books here?
Library.
Okay.
Okay. Again, a difference, your warrants include everything coming out of the town account, and in the past, the library warrants weren't seen by you.
Let's see, so is it just the two that
Just
need
those two,
signing?
just payroll and AP, and this is the
Yeah.
backup for the AP. Yeah. So, that'd be pretty good, we could use a motion to approve the orders. Done.
The warrants,
Yep, approve the warrant.
yes, I'll make a motion to approve the warrants as presented.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, a couple things I want to touch on, under the manager's report. I requested, that the board let the public know about the intentional transition plan, in manager, so that this is not a questionable item to the public any further, and that they will know that you have a plan and that it is presently underway for a smooth transition. So if you will, I can say it, or you can say it. All right.
By all means.
To be clear, I, as a municipal manager for the town of Putney, have a contract that ends on March 13th, 2018. In the hiring of the administrative assistant, with the guidance and help of the select board, the next town manager for Putney will be Karen Ashley, who is presently my assistant. So the whole process we are going through in budget and activities day to day. She is working extremely close with me to gain that knowledge that I've had for working in municipalities for 30 years. And that this is intended to be upfront, free and clear, and members of the public are free and clear to come in and speak to her as if they're speaking to me, so that everything gets taken care of and there's really no secrets going on at all. That everything will be handled and transitioned as smoothly as possible. I've even suggested that Karen will be at the head of the table at town meeting, so that I may sit back and relax. But I will still be there.
You'll still get the hard questions.
I'll still handle whatever needs to be thrown my way. And so that is intentional, that the public know there is a plan here, and that there is a final date for me, and the next person is in place and in line.
And there would be, in that process, a new administrative assistant hired to do much of the work that Karen has been doing, and consideration of increasing the hours of the bookkeeper as well, for the same purpose, to basically improve the efficiency of operations of the managerial end of the
Yeah.
temple.
And you thinking those hours may increase prior to fiscal year end?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I don't know, I guess that would be up to you all to recommend.
Okay.
Because as you know, in the budget, I did alter the bookkeeper's position to become 35 hours a week in this.
As of July 1st.
As of July
Right,
1st.
no, I'm not assuming that would be as of town meeting day per se, or the 13th, but I don't know. I mean, if you said, yes, that's what we really need to do, then I think we would certainly consider it.
Yeah. Good.
We'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that, like I said, this year's budget, it's gonna be a best guess when you got 3 months of, after a transition and,
Yeah.
you know, what we're going to be facing.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
So, second thing under town manager's report, which we didn't have on the agenda, specific items. There was a request when we talked about the Westminster Road and the traffic speed change and the distance and length.
Yeah.
You have A&R color, lots of pictures, circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back. So in the quick A&R Atlas map, I was able to locate approximately where the equestrian sign is southbound on the west-west road to the bottom of what would be West Hill, which is the area in which the school zone begins. And that's approximately 2,990 feet. So, in lieu of having the speed zone be reduced to 30 miles an hour, starting at Hickory Ridge and going to that school zone, this is where I think Josh's reference to the rise in the road is, to then give either at that point it's 30, so you mark before that for a reduced speed, or at that point you mark for a reduced speed and then in proper distance drop it to 30.
No, I think it should be,
30
it should be
at that
going
point.
30 at the rise.
At
Isn't
the
that
rise.
what we all sort of?
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
yeah.
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 So, that we can codify in the ordinance by verbiage, and then you can adopt that ordinance of either the 27th or in January 3rd.
And then there's a.
Then there's a 30-day period.
Warning.
Yeah, warrant, you have to be published and warned and all that stuff. Secondary to that is that you actually can have that speed be 30 coming south and remain as is going north.
Right.
You can do that. One of the comments again made by Josh was there's residences on both sides there. And so the intention was to try to have and protect those properties from having 40 miles an hour in front of them. So at this point, our method has been that both sides of the road would be at 30.
Yeah, because
In
it's
that-
residential right up to the top of that hump, and then it's cornfield after
Yeah.
that, so I think that makes sense.
Okay. So we will codify that within the ordinance and bring it back to the board for their review. And if so approved, then, like I said, a public notice process to go through. And that will have completed, I don't know how many years it's taken to do the traffic study in order to get this.
Not terrible.
No, it's actually not too bad.
Compared to most things like this, it's flowing right along.
All right. So, the technique will be that we're gonna do a measured distance.
Yeah.
Brian meant to go out and measure it, and then something white came out of the sky, and that didn't happen, and so I will request of him to actually do a formal measurement to that sign. This is an A&R click and drop and click and
Yeah.
drop and measure. But I'll get him to give me an actual distance, and then we will,
Make sure that it fits within the
it
confines.
will.
Yeah.
2,900 feet's a lot of place for signs.
Yeah.
So that we can take care of.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it was interesting, just coming south, right at that rise, for the last 2 weeks now, at 5:45 in the morning.
How fast were you going?
I was going 40, but I've never seen that. There's cars coming out of that first house, right out of that rise at 5:45 in the morning, which I've never seen before. And
First house past the rise?
yeah, going south,
Huh.
and
At the equestrian.
you
Right.
really-
Yeah.
on the left-hand side,
Oh, the
going
left-hand
south.
side.
But it's interesting because you don't have a whole lot of room to slow
If
down.
somebody's coming out,
They
yeah,
can't
in
see,
an awkward
they
position.
can't see
Yeah.
what's coming up the hill, so this
Yeah.
would be good.
So is that candidate for a blind drive left, zone on the southbound lane? I mean, you're saying, and I'm thinking,
Might be,
It could
there's
be.
signage that addresses blind drive ahead
Mhm.
yeah,
intentionally for safety.
yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to,
I can ask
worth
Brian
thinking
if he
about, yeah.
can see if MUTC code would allow for
This
that.
is that house, the,
and it's got kind of an
it's
angled
the
driveway.
Sprague's house.
Yeah, it's
Right.
kind of an angled
Yeah.
driveway coming out, so it's-
Yeah.
I think it's hard for them to see.
Sure, well, and there's trees and shrubbery and all sorts of
Exactly.
things, so, yeah, no, that would be.
Yeah, if
hard.
there's other methods that can improve the safety without signage, that's the preference. Just so you know. Meaning, you need to cut your bushes so you can see. It's not my problem that you can't see because you
Yeah,
planted
no,
bushes.
Probably more about the hill, I would think, yeah.
Okay, I can ask him about that. All right,
All right. We've done the warrants, did we? Yes, we did. Any other business?
did you want to announce anything?
I suppose I can, but there's nobody to announce it to, but this will be, I guess I'm going to be not running for reelection after 12 years of serving on the select board. That's been very interesting, and thank the voters of Putney for their continued support over those years, and best of luck to my replacement.
And we certainly want to extend our gratitude to Scott for that long and committed term that he's been doing.
Absolutely.
And we're sad that he isn't running again, but also excited about somebody else having the opportunity to run and
That's right.
fill a position. So there's
New blood.
good and bad for that. Yeah.
And it is uncommon for board members in the state of Vermont to remain beyond 10 years, quite frankly.
Is that true?
Yeah, it is rare that you would have a board remain the same for that many years. So, and it gets harder and harder, and I'm sure the regulations you saw when you first got on the board, of which it took 3 years to figure out what the hell was going on, that's all changed, and certainly in trying times now, there's a lot more unfunded mandates that the town is required to take care of that didn't exist 12 years ago. So, yes, it is ungodly amounts of hours, and certainly the pay is not the reason you're doing it. But I thank you as well, Scott.
Well, thanks. It's been a pleasure working with you, Jim. With you, Karen, briefly, but,
Yeah, short time.
And this is not your last meeting.
and this is not my last meeting. Oh, no.
Now you'd be part of the peanut gallery.
One more.
All right. Do you
I
need
will,
executive session for anything? And then our next meeting should be December 27th?
Yeah, I'm out of town.
I
so
may
I'll
be out of town too.
Oh, that's,
So,
You're on your own,
problem.
Scott.
so maybe-
So
Maybe
next
not.
meeting is or would have been a special meeting, so we won't have one. We will meet the next regular meeting will then be
January
January
third,
Right?
yeah.
3rd.
Oh, yeah.
Third.
Yeah.
Nice try.
And that's a regular meeting.
Yeah, we'll take it then.
1-3.
Any
1-3-18.
particular things besides budget that you want on that agenda?
Not at this point.
No.
All right.
As little as possible.
As little as
Yeah.
possible for as much as we can get.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right.
then I
I'll make
wish
a
you
motion
all
to
a
adjourn.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
All in favor? Aye.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Merry Christmas to all of you. And I guess a Happy New Year, since we'll not be back
Yeah.
till the new year.
And in that
See you
time,
next
I
year.
will turn
Enjoy.
55.